I want to discuss a recent event that happened in the AI community, that is Geoff Hinton announcing his departure from Google. But that's not the point. I mean, he's 75 years old, I believe, or something like that. That's not the point. The point is, of course, the whole splash about his comments about AI. And he gave an interview at Peter Abiel's podcast about AI, Robot Minds. And I want to talk about this because I think I first dismissed it a bit. My partner Zovinar was at MIT when he gave a presentation, and he also announced that while he was there at the conference at MIT early May. So I dismissed it first as, well, look, I mean, he's just an old professor. He's a little bit bitter and this and that. But then listening to his conversation with Peter Abiel, which was pretty frank and humble and honest, and really shows how big of a name he is. I mean, he's an interesting person. So I think dismissing him is a mistake, and I want to apologize for that. And I want to try to understand his reasoning, because he says some interesting things that matter for the AI community, but they also matter for us because our largest position is Tesla. And the reason we're invested in Tesla is because of the artificial intelligence effort that Tesla is making. Now, Tesla is doing it differently than the artificial intelligence that is being propagated through Google, Facebook, large language models, and all of that stuff. But there is an overlap. And I believe that that there will be a time when we will stop talking about AI for this, AI for that, and this and that. There just will be AI. And we'll also stop talking about large language models or reinforcement learning or GANs or self-supervised learning and all that. It just become learning. The same way that we don't talk about kids learning with one type of algorithm in this part of the brain and the other algorithm in that part of the brain. It's just kids learn, humans learn, right? And there's certain things that are common with learning, and I think we're going to try to converge towards those. And I think Geoff Hinton is somebody that has been around for so long that I think it's helpful to listen to him and understand what he's saying and try to take all the valuable information and then go with that towards the future, which is unpredictable. But like always, we can have some insight in some principles about the field that can help us navigate through the field. This is a Not Even Wrong podcast. It's May 11, 2023. This is Delco. Since the last update, the market's flat. We are flat. For the year, we're up 39.8%. The market's up 8.6%. We're outperforming by 31.2%. So Geoff Hinton resigned from Google, and he's saying that he's concerned about the power of modern AI algorithms, in particular of backward propagation. So what he says is that he feels that the technology that he helped reinvent, which was this idea that you have backward propagation, so you learn something and then you go back and then you readjust weights and then you learn again, you go back, you readjust weights, that this readjustment of weights actually is incredibly powerful and has the ability to surpass the human brain. And he's saying that there's a concern that these systems actually will become better at many tasks than humans and smarter than humans. Now, all of these things, I would say so far, you could say they're not that relevant because that's just fear-mongering. But he says two things which I like, and they are to be thought about. One is he says that these systems, particularly ChatGPT and that type of stuff, so the large language models, they can learn how to manipulate humans. So he's talking about the interaction of large language models, or let's just call it transformer-based language models. Let's call it that. Okay, transformer-based language models. They're smart enough to learn how to manipulate humans because they learn, let's say they read books, they read novels, they learn from that kind of stuff. And in those books and those novels, people manipulate each other. So they learn how to manipulate people. And in particular, he talks about the sub-goals that these systems have. And that's a very important little technical detail that a researcher obviously understands much better than maybe people from the outside, which is when you have a goal, let's say, to go from Los Altos to Monterey, California, like that's the goal. So the car, let's say the Tesla car, will have sub-goals. Well, it has to turn left on this particular crossing, and then it has to observe the red light, and it has to surpass a construction site. Those are little sub-goals. Now, of course, hopefully Tesla is able to build a system that creates its own sub-goals. You don't want to have somebody hard-coding that kind of process, or even worse, somebody live manipulating the car while it's driving or something like that. I mean, that would be stupid, right? So the car has to make its own sub-goals, and that's exactly what it's doing, and that's why it's able to drive from Los Altos to Monterey, California. Now, that particular problem, you can extrapolate to the rest of AI. We have certain big goals, for example, communicate, like my chatbot needs to be able to communicate with other people, but I have certain sub-goals. The sub-goal could be to understand a particular sentence. The sub-goal could be not to offend the person, and so on and so forth. Now, what Geoff Hinton is saying is that these systems could be smart enough to make their own sub-goals, to manipulate people, let's say, and this is something also that Max Tegmark spoke about in I think, Human 3.0, in the book, where you have this intelligence that learns how to manipulate people, so they program it so it can do certain things. So there's this feedback loop, and I think that's something Hinton obviously understands really well, because he's been working on feedback loop like that all his life. That's what artificial intelligence has always been and is going to be always. It is a certain feedback loop of learning, of adapting, of being something or becoming something that you weren't before, but that you're going to become, and you become that something through learning, through the process of learning. So that let's put that as point one. So we have backpropagation, which adjusts weights, which is a technical thing, which actually means that you learn how to create sub-goals, and those sub-goals can become dangerous because the system can have a sub-goal to manipulate humans. Let's just leave it at that. This is one risk that Geoff Hinton is pointing out, and I think it's a risk that we should take seriously and talk about it. And I'm a big fan of talking about these things, understanding the problems. I'm not a fan of regulating them in a sense of putting shackles around it. But what I think, and there's something that's another point Hinton makes, which is very interesting. He's actually mentioning a way to, for example, deal with false information or even manipulation, which is you could outlaw it the same way you outlaw fake money, for example. So fake information could be outlawed, simply outlawed. If you spread information that is wrong, this is like spreading money that is fake, and you go to jail. So this would be just I think it's a tangent, but it's an important tangent because it shows that there is a possibility of dealing with this problem without putting it in shackles. You can put jurisprudence at work. You know, one thing that I think the nation state and enlightenment and democracy and all of these developments in the 18th century have helped us evolve is a system of law and order, which is very important because it's a third pillar of our governance structure. You know, we have the executive branch, we have the legislative branch, and we have the jurisdiction. And the jurisdiction is the one that makes sure that the law is observed and also creates the laws, meaning not the legislator, the parliament creates the laws, obviously, but the jurisprudence helps the parliament formulate the laws and also, of course, make sure that the law is enforced. So we can have that kind of system also when it comes to the evolution of things like AI or CRISPR. nuclear power and all that stuff. We can't put shackles on the progress. But what we can do is we can put the system embedded in a system of law and order, which I believe will have the benefit of putting it in check, while it also is going to still be able to proliferate. That will be, I would say, definitely the first point that I want to take away from this conversation. I think as it relates now to Tesla, which is my second point, Tesla is in the business of real world AI versus virtual AI. Virtual AI is all the stuff, chatbots, recommendation engines, so on and so forth. Real world AI is AI where a physical thing moves through nature and reacts and acts and turns left and right because there's something in front of it and it doesn't want to kill that whatever pedestrian, so on and so forth. That is real world AI. That's what Tesla is doing with the car. That's what Tesla is also hopefully going to be able to do with the humanoid robot. So that's very different than what Geoff Hinton has been working on. So the question then comes up, well, is there a relationship? And the answer is yes, there is a relationship because the models are the same. And I think eventually we will all converge towards some sort of learning, which will have a little bit of reinforcement learning, a little bit of self-supervised learning, a little bit of auto-labeling, and all of these things will, I think, be sort of there's a certain, it's like a salad of things. It's a potpourri of techniques that are being put together, and I think it's going to continue to be like that. It's not going to be like one thing and everything else will go away. I think we'll have a mix of all these things. But I think fundamentally, intelligence has evolved in evolution through interaction with the environment, and there's a lot of reason to believe that it's going to evolve that way also on the artificial side. So artificial intelligence, there's new types of intelligence, will also evolve in the process of dealing with nature. Now, what Geoff Hinton is hinting to is that, well, maybe there is a possibility that this artificial intelligence that is being created with transformer-based models learns how to behave and calibrates itself with the real world through humans. And that is, of course, that is sort of a meta-intelligence which is evolved on top of the intelligence that humans have. So it's kind of intelligence 2.0. And in that sense, it's not artificial intelligence, but it's an intelligence which is evolving around another intelligence. And that is something new because the human intelligence has evolved around evolutionary intelligence. So yeah, it's maybe you can say evolutionary intelligence 1.0, human intelligence 2.0, so then artificial intelligence would be intelligence 3.0. And all these intelligences evolve around other intelligence. So evolution evolved around the intelligence, or let's say the laws of physics. So let's call the laws of physics are the given. Then intelligence 1.0 is evolution. Intelligence 2.0 is humans, which evolve around the evolutionary intelligence. So instead of just waiting for mutations and letting the evolutionary process through selection decide who wins, humans can sort of accelerate that a little bit. That's intelligence 2.0. And intelligence 3.0 manipulates intelligence 2.0. So this is kind of where Hinton's coming from. And the risks of that is, of course, that it manipulates us into oblivion. There's also upside that maybe this intelligence 3.0 has things that we can learn from and we can interact with it and so on and so forth. It's not all bleak, but it's just something we should acknowledge that it exists. We don't have to necessarily judge it. We don't have to say it's bad or good, but it's there. It's going to be there. And the distinction between real world AI and virtual AI will blur because if the virtual AI, this, let's say, transformer-based language models, if they manipulate humans to do things, well, then that has physical implications. So that's also an interesting point to think about. And I think now we at Orange Capital Partners, we're invested in real world AI for practical reasons. We want to what is the investment case for real world AI? It's to replace mundane work with robots. That's what we're investing in. We're trying to replace mundane work with robots. That's it. We're not going much further here. We're not trying to save the world or destroy the world or any of that stuff. We're just simply saying we want to replace mundane work with robots. So to summarize, Geoff Hinton is pointing out some interesting things in his call for caution. And what he's saying in particular is that there is an intelligence 3.0 which is being built that is able to manipulate intelligence 2.0, which is humans. And that is something just we have to acknowledge it's there. And that intelligence 3.0 is pretty good. Backward propagation is pretty efficient in understanding what intelligence 2.0 wants to do. So it's pretty good in understanding us. That's another important thing. I think the distinction between real-world AI and virtual AI is going to blur, but there's a difference between replacing mundane work and between manipulating humans. There's a difference. Both of them are intelligences. Both of them are interesting. We are invested in the mundane work replacement. Google and Facebook and these guys are investing in manipulating humans. That is what's so scary about it. That's why he's scared. And I think that is a very powerful comment to make, and we have to take it seriously. Intelligence 3.0, as we know it, is trained to manipulate humans. That is the risk, and we need to take that seriously. The intelligence that we're investing in, the replacing of mundane work, so far so good, is not manipulating humans. It is a lot more in the nature of intelligence 2.0, which is how we evolved humans. It is simply, okay, navigate around nature, learn how to not hit a wall, learn how to not fall down from a hill, things along those lines. I think finally I want to say that the intelligence community, the artificial intelligence community, has a responsibility to continue working on new models and better models because it's a powerful technology. I don't think we should stagnate. I think progress is the only way forward for humans. And I think that we can, regardless of the political ramification, the only thing we have is progress. And therefore, we have to continue working on it. And we can try to mitigate the downside as much as we can. I think understanding it the way Geoff Hinton is explaining it is a good start to then get solutions for problems. Thank you.